Sally that girl in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally that girl in the kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make tishbishti. Yes, I recognize it is quite a mouthful, but you are going to want to have a mouthful of this. It is incredible. It is a typical Sephardic-Turkish dessert, and of course, I learned it from my grandmother and my mom, and now of course I make it. It is a Passover-friendly recipe. It is so good, and you are not going to miss the flour. We use matzah meal and nuts, and of course lots of orange and an incredible syrup that goes on top. This flavor is like nothing you've ever tried, and you will not miss the flour. You can make this cake all year long because it is that delicious. So let's not wait another second and let's get started. For the tishbishti, or the cake part of the recipe, you will need 1 whole large orange, peel, juice, and all, 1.5 cups of matzah meal, 6 large eggs, 1 cup of safflower oil, 10 ounces of chopped walnuts, 1/2 cup of sugar, and some non-stick cooking spray. And for the syrup part of the recipe, you will need 1 cup of sugar, 1 1/4 cups of water, the juice of 1 large lemon, 3 pieces of orange peel, each about 1 inch in length, and 1 cinnamon stick. If you like a syrupy tishbishti, then you may want to double up on the syrup. This amount of syrup is perfect for your tishbishti, but if you like a really wet tishbishti, then you can double up on this syrup recipe, and you can either add more or you can save it for when you serve your tishbishti, and you can give it an extra drizzle of syrup on top. Either way, it'll be delicious, so go with the single or double recipe of syrup. That's up to you. You will also need a cutting board and a knife, and a small paring knife so that you can remove some of the orange peel, and a long thin knife such as a steak knife to cut your tishbishti. You'll also need a large spoon such as a serving spoon, 3 bowls of different sizes, small, medium, and large, another bowl and a fork to crack your 6 eggs into and beat them, some wet measuring cups, some dry measuring cups, a 9x13 Pyrex or baking dish, a food processor, a blender, and I am using a device to squeeze my orange with and another one to squeeze my lemon with, but of course you can just squeeze them by hand, and you're going to also need some oven mitts. Some tongs would also be very useful, but if you don't have them, then you can just use a fork or a spoon. And then you will need a medium pot in which to make the syrup. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. First thing you're going to want to do is add your walnuts to your food processor. I did buy chopped walnuts, but if you notice, the pieces are still fairly large. And for tishbishti, you really want very small pieces. So you're going to add them to your food processor, and then you're going to process them until they break down to much smaller pieces. Now, this particular bag has chopped walnuts, but you can use whole walnuts because you will be processing them as long as you have 10 ounces. So this bag has 8 ounces. So I'm going to do a full bag, and then I'm going to do 2 more ounces from a second bag. Now I'm going to check my pieces to see if they're the size that I am looking for. And then of course, if they're not, then you just process them a little longer. But please be sure not to over-process because you don't want walnut butter after all. You are looking for pieces. So these are still just slightly larger than what I'm looking for. So I'm going to process them again for just another minute or so. We're almost there, but I'll show you exactly what I want them to look like when they're ready. So let's take another look. Perfect. See, they're starting to kind of clump up a little bit. That's perfect. If we go any further, we keep processing, then they're going to become walnut butter, which is not what we want. So this is exactly right. They're fine and they're slightly sticky. This is the stage that you're looking for. So now I'm just going to do it again with the other 2 ounces of walnuts. Of course, you can do all 10 ounces at once. It really depends on the size of your food processor. I just don't like to overcrowd my food processor. But if you have a larger one, then of course, just do all 10 ounces at once. Now, as my walnuts had been processing, I had been adding them to one of my medium bowls. But the truth is you can just add them directly onto the matzah meal, which you are going to be adding to a medium-sized bowl, because we are going to take these walnuts and we're just going to add them directly to that matzah meal. And then we're just going to use our large spoon to combine the 2. We just want to make a nice mixture where the matzah meal and the walnuts are equally distributed, because this is going to be the base of our tishbishti, the base of our cake. But of course, it's missing the star of the show, the orange. So for now, just set this bowl aside and we are going to start working on our beautiful oranges. So the first thing you're going to want to do is bring your cutting board, your knife, and your paring knife close to you, together with your oranges and your orange juicer. Now, I'm going to grab one of my oranges, but this orange I'm only going to be using for its peel. I want to remove 3 strips of orange peel, each about 1 inch or 1.5 inches in length. And we are going to use this orange peel to flavor our delicious syrup that's going to be poured over our tishbishti. Now remember, if you're doubling up on your recipe, then you're going to want 6 pieces of orange peel. But if you're making a single recipe of syrup, then you need 3 pieces of orange peel, each about 1 inch, 1.5 inches in length. And then we are going to add these to this incredible syrup that is going to really flavor our tishbishti. And you will see very quickly that orange plays a huge part in this recipe. You can take that second orange and put it away, because all we're going to be using from that orange is the orange peel. So we have these beautiful pieces of orange peel that have all those natural oils and that flavor and that essence of oil, and that is going to be incredible in our syrup. So set those aside for now and put away your paring knife. And now we're going to work on the other orange. So this orange, we are going to use the entire orange, juice, peel, everything, except of course for the seeds. There is a ton of flavor in the orange peel and fiber and vitamins. So we are going to use all of the orange. So for starters, what we want to do is we want to juice our orange. And as I said before, if you don't have a juicing device, that's fine. You can just squeeze the orange into a bowl, and that's perfectly fine. Just be sure to remove any seeds. Now, you'll notice that I squeezed the orange really well, where there's no juice left in it, but it doesn't matter if there's any membrane left inside, and of course, all of that pith. We are going to use all of it, so don't bother removing any of it. The only thing you're going to want to remove is the little stem, because of course, we don't want to eat that hard piece. So we remove that, and then this half is ready. So now we just move on to do the same thing with the other half of the orange. You just want to squeeze it until you remove all of the juice. And of course, we are conserving that juice. We are going to use that juice as part of our recipe along with the outside of the orange, the entire peel. So of course, conserve it. And then once you have squeezed the second half, then you have that delicious orange juice and you have that lovely orange that's been squeezed out, nothing left inside. We have both halves. We removed the stem on one, and on the other one, it's really just a tiny little speck. So I just removed that also for good measure. Now our orange is ready and our juice is ready. And now it's time to move on to the next step. So now set your orange juice aside, as we are not getting to that right now. We are going to first work on our orange peel. So this is going to go into the pot that we have on the stove. Now this pot is the one we're going to use for our syrup, but we are first going to use it to soften our orange peel. So what we do is we place the orange into the pot, and then we add water over it. In this case, because of the size of my pot, I'm adding about 5 cups of water to it, but the measurement doesn't really matter because we are going to be discarding this water. We are only using it to boil our orange peel to make it soften and to make it lose some of that bitterness, but retain all of that delicious flavor and fiber and vitamins. So what we're going to do is we are going to pour water over our oranges, just about enough water to cover them, or just when they're just starting to float is perfect. And then we are going to turn our stove on to medium heat. So what we want to do is make this water boil, and in the process, it will soften that delicious orange peel. But we are going to do this process about 3 times. You can do it 3 or 4 times, however many times it takes until you feel that your orange peel is practically breaking apart. So what you do is you let your water boil, and of course you're going to keep an eye on it. And this is where the tongs come in handy, because I like to turn my orange over every so often. It will fight you and want to flip itself over, but this way you make sure that you're softening the inside and the outside of the orange. And of course, if you don't have a tong, like I said, you can just use a spoon or a fork, whatever works best for you. And then you're just going to let this water boil. And then you want the water to reduce. It's just going to evaporate and just consume itself as it starts to soften the orange. And then once you feel that the water has gone down and there's really not that much water left in your pot, then you want to drain off this water and just add fresh water onto the oranges. You don't even have to measure it. I just take it over to my sink and I pour water right over the oranges, because I'm just looking for the oranges to just start to float. And then you're going to bring that back over onto your stove, and you're going to put the heat back onto medium, and you're going to repeat the process again. Now, what you're going to notice as the water boils again is that the oranges pretty much are starting to fall apart. That's what you want. You want to soften it, and I use my tongs and just kind of press them down a little, and that way I can tell if they're starting to break easily. That's when we know that our orange is starting to soften. So I like to do this process 3 times. The original time, then I drain my water off and add water again, and then 1 more time. So it depends on the heat of your stove. You could end up doing this 3 or 4 times until you reach the point where you feel that your oranges have really, really softened. But it doesn't really matter. Just do it as many times as you need until you find that your orange peel is really nice and soft. So once you've done this process 3 or 4 times, the orange peel is ready. So what you want to do is, this is why I use tongs, but of course you can use a spoon, is you're going to remove this orange peel from the boiling water. So turn your stove off and then bring over a small bowl. And what you want to do is take the orange peel from the hot water and add it to your bowl. That amazing tishbishti flavor, that flavor that you love so much, comes from this delicious orange peel, so make sure you get every last piece. Now, once you drain off all the liquid, you want to add any little pieces that are left behind of that inside membrane, just any part of the orange that is left behind, because in it there is tons of flavor. Now just take this pot over to your sink and give it a quick rinse, because we are going to use the same pot to make our syrup. So just give it a quick rinse, and then you can just bring it back to your stove, because we are going to use it again for our syrup. So now we are getting really close to putting together the tishbishti. So now would be a good time to preheat your oven to 375 degrees so it starts to warm up, and make sure you have a rack placed in the center of the oven. Now, you're going to bring over your blender, and you have your beautiful orange peel that is nice and soft, and you're going to add it into your blender. And then along with the orange peel, you are going to add that delicious orange juice that we had squeezed earlier. We are going to add it right on top of that delicious peel. So you can imagine just how much delicious orange flavor is going to be combined with those delicious walnuts. It is really incredibly tasty. So now make sure you've put the cover on your blender, and then you're going to puree these two ingredients together to form a thick orangey mixture. It just takes a minute or two to bring them together. So just let your blender run for about a minute or so. It doesn't take too long because the orange peel is very soft, and you see those beautiful little orange specks running throughout, which are going to add a ton of flavor to the cake. So after about a minute or so, you can turn off your blender and take off the cover, and the mixture will be ready. Wait till you see what it looks like. It's got a beautiful, vibrant orange color, and the smell is incredible. It's really just so delicious. And this is really one of the most important ingredients, of course, besides those amazing walnuts in your tishbishti. Just look at that thick, orange, fragrant mixture. Wow, it smells so good. So you just want to make sure that you take all of that yummy mixture out of the blender. So remove the blade if you need, and if not, just be very, very careful and use a serving spoon or whatever your preferred utensil is, and just make sure you're scraping all of that delicious orange peel and orange juice mixture out of your blender and into your large bowl. The color on this mixture is just gorgeous. Really, it is so fragrant. I wish you could smell it. It is just divine. So set it aside for just a moment. And what you want to do is you want to crack your 6 eggs into a bowl, and you want to beat them well with a fork. Now, once they are well beaten, then you are going to add this egg mixture into that orange mixture, and then you're just going to use that same serving spoon to combine them. Measure out the sugar and the oil from the tishbishti recipe and add the sugar to the bowl. And then right on top of that, you're going to add your oil. Now, once again, use your spoon to bring the ingredients together. I just like to go around the bowl and use the spoon to stir, and then I help myself by turning the bowl as needed to just help incorporate the ingredients. Of course, the oil is not going to become fully incorporated with the mixture, but that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that the sugar dissolves as you stir. Now, bring over the bowl that has the walnuts that you processed combined with the matzah meal, and you're going to add this beautiful mixture into the liquid ingredients. And then you're just going to use that same spoon to stir the ingredients together and bring them all together. And then now you will notice, of course, that the oil gets absorbed because now you've added these dry ingredients. So the oil is going to be absorbed by the matzah meal, and all those delicious walnuts are going to be combined with that orange mixture and the sugar. And this is really going to be ridiculously delicious once it is baked, because just imagine all of these beautiful natural ingredients together. You are not going to miss the flour in this recipe. The matzah meal really just helps bind all of those lovely, delicious natural ingredients, and really is like nothing you've ever tasted. So now bring over your rectangular baking dish, and what you want to do is give it a nice spray of non-stick cooking spray, because of course you want your pieces of tishbishti to be able to release easily from the pan. So now bring over your bowl, and all you're going to do is use your spoon to add the mixture into your baking dish. And then once you get all of the mixture in, then use the back of your spoon to help you spread the mixture out so that the mixture is pretty much the same thickness across the entire pan. So now it's time to bake our tishbishti. So very carefully place it on a center rack in your hot oven and set a 45-minute timer to allow it to bake. Now, Once it's in the oven, it's time to work on our syrup. So we're going to go back to our stove and we're going to take our lemon and we're going to squeeze it into that pot that we had used earlier to boil our orange. I am using a lime squeezer, which is a little small for this lemon, but it works. It's just not as pretty as it would be if I were using the larger device that is made for lemons and not limes, but it works perfectly and it gets all of the juice out and it keeps the seeds from getting into my pot. Now, of course, you can also just squeeze it by hand. Remember to hold your lemon half facing upward so that the seeds stay in the lemon and just the juice is added to your pot. Now, we're going to be using both halves of the lemon, so the full lemon is going to be squeezed into our pot, and we will not be using the lemon peel, but the addition of lemon to our syrup just balances it out perfectly and adds another dimension of flavor, and of course works very well with the citrus that is already in our recipe. So once all of the lemon juice is in our pot, we are going to build our syrup. So the first thing you're going to want to do is measure out your water and add it to the pot right on top of the lemon juice. And then right on top of that, you measure out your sugar and you add that. And then bring over your cinnamon stick and add it. That's going to be an incredible aromatic and it's going to add a lot of flavor. And then remember those 3 pieces of orange peel that we had cut off of an orange earlier? Now is when we're going to use them. We're going to add them to this syrup and we're going to stir everything together because what we want to do is heat this mixture up so it infuses with that beautiful cinnamon and that flavor from those delicious orange peels. It is going to be an incredible syrup to complement an already incredible cake. So what you want to do is you want to turn your stove on and you're going to put it on to about a medium heat to allow this mixture to come to a boil. So on my stovetop, this takes about 20 minutes to become a delicious syrup. But of course, remember each stove runs differently. Some are hotter and some are cooler. So watch it and make sure it doesn't overboil. And then after about 20 minutes, you can turn it off and then just leave it on the stove so that it steeps with those beautiful aromatics and becomes super flavorful while it cools. Now, we want one of the 2 items to be cool, either the tishbishti or the syrup. So one should be hot while the other one is cool. So since the tishbishti will come out of the hot oven, then I just allow my syrup to sit and cool while the tishbishti finishes baking. So once the 45 minutes have passed, the tishbishti is ready to be taken out of the oven and it is looking and smelling delicious. It is so incredibly fragrant with all of that orange and those walnuts. It smells so great that really it could be eaten as is. But as we know, matzah meal tends to be a little drying. So the syrup really complements this cake and it really, really brings it over the top. So I cannot wait to cut into this and try it, but we're going to wait about 5 minutes and just let it cool a touch before we cut our tishbishti. Now, the typical Sephardic-Turkish way to cut this is on the bias, which basically just means diagonally. So what I do is I start at one corner and then I start to cut my tishbishti and then I use that first line as my guide and then I just cut lines according to this same angle. So that's my first one and then I just leave about an inch of space and then I cut my next one and then I just repeat this over and over. So we want to leave about an inch or so and just continue to cut going in the same direction. Now, of course, once we get to the corner, then we're going to move over to the other side and continue to do the same thing. And then when we are done with this side, then what we do is we are going to cut in the opposite direction because what we're going to create now is diamond shape. So we start at the opposite top corner and we make our first cut. And then we just repeat the same process we did a moment ago. We leave about an inch and then we just cut line by line until you've cut your entire pan of tishbishti into diamonds. So now our syrup has had a chance to cool. Remember, we want a hot tishbishti, but a cool syrup. So we are going to remove our delicious aromatics. We can remove our cinnamon stick and our orange peels, which, by the way, the orange peels are very much edible and delicious. They are a little bitter, of course, but they're really yummy. If you like them, you can even eat them. Now, the syrup is ready, and you can pour that syrup into a glass measuring cup or anything with a spout to make it easier to pour the syrup onto our hot tishbishti. So now carefully bring over your tishbishti, and it's time to pour on this delicious syrup on top. Now remember, I made a single syrup, so I'm going to pour the whole thing on it. If you decided to double up on the syrup, then you would be pouring on half because you want to conserve the other half to use it when you serve your tishbishti. Or of course, if you really want to go for it, you can just put on the double syrup. That's really totally up to you. I only wish you could smell this. It smells incredible. I cannot wait to taste it. And notice how it immediately absorbs all that incredibly delicious, fragrant syrup that we created. Because of course, this is a cake made of walnut and matzah meal. So it's gonna really just soak up all of that delicious syrup, and it's going to be incredibly flavorful and moist. Look at how tasty this looks. And once you try it, you are not going to believe it. All of that infusion from the orange and the syrup and the cinnamon, this is just such a delicious, moist Passover treat that can be eaten all year long. You do not have to wait for Passover. So now it's time to take a bite, my favorite part. It is smelling and looking so good. I can't wait. Oh, wow. It is just perfect. That orange is running throughout, but it's almost exotic tasting. If you're eating this without being familiar with the recipe, you wouldn't really know exactly what went into it, but you know that you love it. Wow, this is incredible. Really, one of the best Passover cakes you will ever eat. And as I said, it is perfect year-round because it is that good. You can tell by my empty plate just how delicious this is. And look at how beautiful it looks. So how incredible does this cake look? It is moist with that delicious syrup running over it. And I personally prefer serving it cold. It's just tasty and sweet, yet tangy from that orange. It is incredible. And those nuts, unbelievable. You are going to love this recipe. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're going to have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like, comment, and share. And remember to subscribe to my channel and to touch that little notification bell so that you don't miss out on a single amazing, delicious, incredible recipe that I have planned for you. And if you're not already following me, make sure to follow Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter. I'll see you next time. Sally That Girl in the Kitchen.